The Board of Health meeting to order. And I hope everyone has had time to read the minutes. If everyone has had time to read the minutes, do I have an approval for the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of June 16th, 2017. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Unfinished business. Animal investigation portion of rabies exposure incidents and the need for the development of protocol procedure to ensure appropriate hands-off follow-up discussion.
All right. Well, we pulled together a work group comprised of myself, Ellen, Shirley joined in, which was great, and Lori was going to participate, but the fire stuff kept her busy, and then Sheriff Deputy, but they could not attend either. So on the 31st of July, Ellen, Shirley, and I met, and we had a great discussion about where we go with all of this. And we threw around some ideas, but essentially what we need to do is make some kind of a county ordinance. We had two ideas when it comes to this. We could reach out to other counties with similar resources as us, basically no vet in the county, no animal control, etc., and see what process they follow, or we can just come up with one of our own that's really simple. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We've, I say we, that's the royal we. Really, Shirley has done a tremendous amount of back work on this. She's called around to all the resources that we do have in town. She talked to Dave Brink about any kind of trainings that might be available. She talked to some other people who have worked in veterinarian offices. Basically, the way I'm feeling, and I'm only going to speak for myself, is that we know that on day 10, the animal needs to be assessed by somebody to say, yep, they're free of signs and symptoms of rabies. And I'm feeling like that person needs to be a DVM, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. I did call the Department of Livestock and I talked to them about all the signs and symptoms that we would be looking for in animals, and she said, really, it can be as subtle as any signs of illness or any changes in behavior, like a dog that just won't jump up into the back of a truck one day. You know, that could be a whole variety of things, or a dog that is kind of nauseated and throws up once. She said we've had cases where animals have shown these very slight symptoms toward the end of their observation, their 10-day observation, and they end up having rabies. And so that makes me really uncomfortable. I don't feel like even if I had some kind of a training, would feel comfortable saying, yep, this dog looks good to go. And then you add the emotional factor of pet owners. They might not tell you the truth. They might say, yeah, my dog is normally like this, or they're fine, even if they might not be fine, and showing some of those very subtle symptoms. So the bottom line is this. We can get as in-depth as we want, or we can keep it as superficial as we want. The county has to have some kind of an ordinance. So I would like to have something that says basically the county health officer is required to look into this. They can also designate that to someone else, which would probably be me or my department. And then we have to investigate the rabies exposure portion of this. We know that on every situation, day 10, that animal has to be assessed. So I think that the county ordinance could be as simple as the health officer does this investigation. On day 10, they have to go to the vet.
So the health officer would have to transport the animal to the vet, or the vet would come out?
It would be the owner's responsibility.
Okay. Oh,
in
okay.
those strange situations where the owner says, I'm not going to do it, that's where we would have to figure out what to do.
Okay.
And we walked away from our July 31st meeting with a lot of different jobs and things to do, and Ellen was going to contact somebody from the Missoula Veterinary Clinic about potential resources. So we have some more legwork to do to see if anybody is willing to help us out in those situations. For the 10-day quarantine. Right now I'm talking about your run-of-the-mill, a dog bit a person cases, not a high-risk bite, all those kinds of things. They could get pretty sticky if you have a dog attacking somebody repetitively, etc. So this is a huge topic with a lot of different ways it can go.
Did we have law enforcement input into your discussion?
He wasn't able to make it. I talked to him after, and he said, we're fine helping. We just don't want it to become so specific that we're not able to meet the requirements of the ordinance.
Okay, will
So-
they help craft that piece of it?
I think they will. So what
Okay.
I'm imagining is a very simple ordinance right now, just so we have something in place where it gives me some backing when I say to the pet owner, you need to bring this dog into the vet on day 10. Because right now we're telling him to do it, but we really have no legal backing at all. We used to, and then the law changed. Most people are pretty cooperative, though. We've already had 9 animal exposures since July 1st. We just wrapped up, actually it might be 10 now. We had a little Chihuahua named Olaf recently. The animal names are the best. But anyways, we've had a lot this year. Last year we had 6 total, and we were already at 9 or 10. Most people are really cooperative, but sometimes they're not. So I think we'll have some kind of a flow chart that us boots on the ground folks will be using. Myself, law enforcement. We've already developed some handouts. We've already developed some like wallet cards for the sheriff's deputies to use, to make sure that they're asking the right questions and telling them the right things. So there's still a lot of work to be done here. So I guess my question is, do we want to come up with our own? Or do we want to search around to other counties with similar resources and see what they have in place? I've kind of been asking around, and most people are like, oh, yeah, we got to get to that. So I think we're all kind of in the same boat right now.
It's not a bad thing to get others, at least just for input.
Yeah.
If there are any others.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could do your own from there and just kind of use it as a guideline or
Mm-hmm.
some good ideas or not.
Mm-hmm.
The town does have
Do
their
they have
guidelines,
one?
Yep,
so
the
we
town
can
does.
incorporate.
Yeah, yeah.
Officer Smiley happened to walk in. He wanted to talk to Ellen about something else, and so he was giving us his input on things, and that's how we came up with the connection for the Missoula Veterinary Clinic. But I forgot where I was going with that. Anyways, he did have some input there. So
Did you say that there was an existing one you've seen?
Yes, with the
Okay.
town,
Of which county?
the town of Superior.
Oh, okay. So what does the town of Superior have then? I mean, is it an actual protocol or
Yes,
procedure?
It's an ordinance.
Oh, so
So many.
have we had that for review? Have you looked at that?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there something there that
We can incorporate.
is ambiguous or needs to be added to, or is it something we could look at? And
It includes like the number of dogs people can have at their residence and licensing the animals and that kind of
oh,
thing.
not about rabies though.
Specifically about rabies.
Well, the difference
Often-
between the town of Superior and what we have at the county level is that there are 2 people who are immunized against rabies, and they do help with the enforcement part of it. So they're going to the home and talking to the pet owner and making sure that they follow everything that needs to happen.
Okay.
So we don't have anything like that. But we could definitely look at that one and kind of build from that.
Sounds like a good starting place.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
also, I guess, you'd try Sanders County or somewhere like
Yeah.
that that's similar.
Mhm.
Except they have a vet.
No, they have 2 now.
Yeah.
Probably 2, yeah.
Yep, they have 2 now.
Yeah.
We have a couple of people that worked as veterinarian techs in the past, but they don't have current certifications. So they wanted to help with the animals, but the value on the liability portion of giving you an assessment after 10 days was more important that the person have
Yeah.
qualifications, current ones.
And if you need help with the ordinance doing that, I'd be glad to help you out. So,
Great. Do you want to be part of our work group?
I will, yeah.
Okay, cool. So what I'm hearing is that we should probably pull together a few ordinances from counties that are similar to us, as well as the town of Superior, and then our work group can meet again and maybe work on something. Does that sound good? And then we can propose that? What is the process for putting in a county ordinance?
I haven't done one since I've been here. Have you ever done one?
Not that sticks out in my mind, I'm sure we probably have.
We've done a couple ordinances, but are you talking about a Board of Health ordinance or a County Commissioner ordinance?
I don't know. So what would this fall under?
Well,
Probably
it's the
both.
powers and duties of the Board of Health to adopt ordinances that would, it'd almost be more specifically for them, but the commissioners have powers and duties to adopt general ordinances for the outlying areas of the county and stuff. If the Board of Health adopts an ordinance, it really covers everybody in the county,
Okay.
whether they're in Alberton, Superior, or out of the county. So the advantage with having the Board of Health. The Board of Health can adopt an ordinance, but because you have 3 commissioners on the Board of Health, then you're required to follow their notification processes. So you would notify it at a Board of Health meeting that the ordinance is here, it's available for review. There would be a 15 to 30-day comment period, and then you would take it up at the next Board of Health meeting to adopt the ordinance for the Board of Health.
That sounds like the better route. I mean, you would rather have it be the same protocol throughout the county, whether it's the town of Alberton, Superior or not, right?
Well, the people run back and forth. I mean, if the dog was out here and your protocol said this, and then they
And
run
they
into
ran
the-
into the city. Yeah.
and they go, oh, well, good, or, I don't, it's gonna apply, and then the other thing is not, obviously take the Superior ordinance and make sure that things are compatible, not making a conflict out of it, so.
Well, I guess we could do the dog. One thing too is make sure when you do an ordinance, or I guess we'll be here too, allow for penalties or,
Oh,
punitiveness.
that dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's an ordinance, but there's not any. Well, okay, what if they do it? Yeah.
And Ellen was talking about that quite a bit.
Mhm.
And so she has a good idea about what could be doable in regards to that. And I wasn't sure if we wanted to dive into that or just do it all at one time. So
The town has that portion in their
Mhm.
ordinance too, so we can look at all of it and coordinate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to bring out that the exposures from bats with rabies is something
Mhm.
that's kind of being brought to the forefront again right now, and so this is just some information for.
Oh, yeah.
2 weeks ago, I had someone bring me a bat. Found it dead in the yard. Thought they'd had an injury through its back and its abdomen, but I said, just bring it to me, and I looked at it, and it was fine. It was a healthy, squishy, little juicy bat. I think it was probably fine. I don't know why it died. Maybe rabies, maybe not, but we didn't have any exposures, so we didn't have it tested. Which, the testing fees just went up, and it's now $77 per critter to have tested for rabies, for small animals.
And you
Pretty
still
expensive.
have the little bat kits.
We do. We have a bat box ready to go that Sherlew had made a couple years ago.
Mhm.
And we have some more, do we need some more?
Shipping boxes?
Mhm.
No.
Okay,
We can get those.
good, thank you.
Okay, so I will schedule another work group meeting, and we will pull together some ideas and propose that, I guess, at the next Board of Health meeting, whatever that is.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Sounds good, thank you. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome.
Pruitt property junk vehicle update.
Ellen, she's to be here. I guess I'll cover for Ellen because she asked me to. She has contacted Pruitt's, at least Steve Pruitt, and I believe have 2 conversations, been basically denied that we're going to gain access just by having a conversation with them and asking them to gain access to make an assessment. I'm taking a little different route of things, is that I've demonstrated that there is enough junk vehicles on the property that the junk vehicle rules and regulations for Montana can be enforced. So we wrote the first initial letter July 28th, did not receive a response for that. I've generated a certified letter, sent that out, and then protocol is we copy that to the enforcement and to the junk vehicle people. And we even had responses back that says, hey, we're ready. You know, you don't know, you need to phrase it that you're gonna refer it. You don't tell somebody that you're sending this for enforcement. You can't make that decision for the DEQ, but they're willing to jump on it, and they already have a Pruitt file, and I think the person that I sent it to may have worked on it before, so we're just working through the process and do that. I hope that through the junk vehicle portion of it, have some conversations with Ellen, because I believe when we were in I was in Gallatin County, we had a lady that had 100 cats in her house, and it got to be a little bit beyond belief of what 100 cats would do in a house. And we and other concerned people, and obviously public health, and that we do visits, and the health officer we had at that time was an MD, and he was very active, and we could really lay down the law and stuff like that. We finally were able to converse the county attorney, and we enjoined that lady from owning cats. She could no longer own cats in that residence and stuff. So I don't think it's not precedent setting to do that, but in Pruitt's case, if we could, follow up and say, we're gonna have the cleanup that's gonna be cleaned up, but then it's gonna be enjoined so that you start hauling stuff back in there, and it's gonna be an immediate enforcement case, because this is what, 20 years of pile of stuff out there that just ebbs and flows or something like that. So to get it stopped and clean it up for one last time, not just clean it up and see it reappear and clean up and appear. So anyway, I hope to work with Ellen on that, see if we can search that part of it. But I want to be able to have that search so that if the DEQ takes their enforcement action on it and cleans that up, that we can get a generalized cleanup of the property besides just the junk vehicles.
That would be good.
That's kind of the latest.
We've had no feedback then from the property owners?
Well, he and Ellen have had conversations, but it's like, she says, well, we would really like to come out and look at the property and try to do an assessment of the property and see what's there, and he's declined to allow that to happen and stuff.
Okay.
So, Ellen's not ready to take it to a court situation to say we want to do an investigation.
Well, wasn't there some law enforcement involvement there at one time?
There was.
That they had access?
Yeah, they've been on the property for some other law enforcement related activities and stuff, but they're satisfied with their part of it and do that. Right now, if we're going to have to go through a formal process with you notify a court that you want to gain access to this private person's property. The court concurs with you for these reasons, and then it gives you the allowance to go in there and investigate what's going on.
So it appears there's no voluntary removal by the property owner at this point.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, I've pretty much monthly take pictures of the property out there to see the ebb and flow of things, and at least the junk vehicles, they don't change on that, so that's an enforceable item on there. The junk and the trash and everything else, that's a little harder to assess what's coming and going with that. But really, we don't know at this time whether somebody's really residing down in that other end down there full time, and a couple of these trailers or shacks or whatever. I mean, there's been reports of people in there. People think they're in there, but proving that they're there at a full-time occupancy, I don't know if that's been established yet. But it's probably very good likelihood that there is. So that's kind of the latest on Pruitt.
Okay. So how would you establish whether they're living there or not? I mean,
We're going to have to get a...
if I sat there with the camera and seen someone going back and forth
Yeah.
day in and day out? I mean, is that what it would take?
That would probably be what it would take, I mean, but I think just accessing the property and seeing who's there and working with law enforcement to find out who they think has been there in the past, but just doing it enough in a formal enough way so that whatever we do and whatever we investigate, we pretty much can just have access to the property, and if we want to go out there and visit on this day, fine, we'll go visit. We want to visit this day, but right now we're just hamstrung because we can't just walk on that property anytime. I mean, I've been taking pictures real regularly on all three sides of it, but even if that gets a little iffy when you're out there on that interstate taking pictures, sheesh.
Yeah.
At least you know where my camera was. Going on out there. So.
All right. Well, thank you. Temporary food service license, large events, procedures, and protocol follow-up discussion.
Well, I brought that up to the board before and kind of mentioned it. Some of the more recent developments have kind of brought it back into focal point again. More recently, the pirate party that was up at Hagen, that I'm not going to say was, if there was something unique about that, it was that the number of people that were from out of state, and to the best of my knowledge, there was one food vendor from Missoula and in Montana. The rest of the food vendors were from all out of state. And the food vendors that had been there supposedly had been at the pirate party was held, I understand, for the last 7-8 years in Lolo Hot Springs down there, and they've been down there. When these people were telling me that I need a plan review, and they're going to go, well, what's a plan review? It quickly became very ludicrous, because it's like, you guys have not operated in Montana and in Missoula County without plan reviews and going through all of this numerous times. So to act like, we're dumb hicks out here in Mineral County, isn't going to cut it. But the other thing that I think Candace can attest to is that if we could just figure out their email process, that might be a great advantage, because we get emails from ended up being the same vendor, but it was in 4 or 5 different formats. These guys just floated around and used this email, and we were, elephant ears and this day and queen bee the next day and Teresa, it was just beyond bizarre. So hopefully a large event process would start to get some of this focalized in a more expedient manner, at least for my department. And I spent probably 14 hours of overtime on the pirate party up there, and I don't know, we picked up $500 and something in temporary food service licenses. So the county was at a net loss of pretty significant to send me up there at overtime hours to traipse you around with the Yahoo crowd up there and stuff. So
there's other tax revenues being generated from an event like that, though. Obviously, like $100,000 changed hands in an event like that, so like all that's taxed at some level, right?
not to my department.
Well, government, big one big bank, right? I mean, not one big bank, but like if it's taxed at a federal level, that still counts somewhat towards tax revenue, right?
No.
Don't be subsidized by the feds.
Not for the county. Not in essence for the county.
Okay, well,
The property
Just making a
tax.
point, there's a lot
up
of
there.
tax revenues that get generated, whether it's federal, it doesn't affect you, I guess, but when that amount of money changes hands, there's quite a bit of tax revenue.
Well, there is, and I guess, that's certainly a point to
I'm
look
not
at.
saying that like your fee here is exorbitant or you're trying to make it easier for yourself, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, and it's, the fee thing. So, one issue I've been trying to follow up with the state is their exposure for the county if we really don't do something at these temporary food service events. If we pretty much say, you know, we don't have the time and resource to do that, I'm pretty sure that the state's gonna say, yes, you do have exposure. Ellen thought that very likely there was exposure because I had that discussion with her before we got into this. So if that's the case, and we really just can't say, well, we'll just let things be, then the next step is to, let's just do something. If there's only one of me that has to handle, I think there ended up being nine food services up there that, you know, and it's circumstances are always interesting, but you know, I was up there for a long period of time because the one guy was coming from Oregon, and yes, his truck broke down, and then this happened, and you know, and you don't know those things, but you can do that. So this, I think, is going to be a process to get that in a more, like I say, expedient way. The concerns that Brooke Lincoln has had and Nate and Brennan can talk about is that I would like to research this in a manner so that we make it really user friendly to the local people and the landowners, and it just requires the event organizers, if they're going to come from out of state and do that, just it puts them on a earlier, more even notice, so that you know because the local people can come in and let us know that there's going to be, you know, this many events. So that's what I would be proposing, is to try to develop an ordinance where the Tin Can Alley and up at Hagen and everything else, that they have a, you know, if it's the landowner sponsoring the event, they can get a annual permit and then tell us how many that they're going to be, and if they tell us that there's going to be 5 events up there and we're going to follow this protocol pretty much every time, then fine, it's all done. I don't have to do that. All I have to do is then deal if there's some temporary food services that come in and do that. If and anymore, there's getting to be quite a bit of a mixed bag. If it's a mobile food service, then they're licensed and they can operate, and I can be less concerned about that. But if they're mobile food service license, we have no mechanism to have those people tell me that they're going to come there and operate. I show up and here's a mobile food service, and I'm like, hey, I didn't know you were going to be here. And that was for the Mud Bog event up there. There was 4 mobile food services, and I had no idea that they were going to be on that site and location, which just catches me off guard, and you don't quite know what you're to do with those, because then you're at the event. The only way you can check to see if they're licensed is they can show you the license, but then you have to go back and check it on the computer. So this thing would be, hey, tell us those people up front and get that information into the department here, and we just should be able to make the process a lot easier and stuff. Besides being up there at the event, I probably easily spent 20-25 hours emailing, responding, doing plan reviews for that pirate party and stuff. So it wasn't just the time up there. It was a lot of other hours.
And what's your primary concern about the exposure? Is there liability? Are there liability issues along with health issues that you're concerned?
Well, I'm, in quick discussion with confirmed with the state, I think the county has exposure if we just choose not to license temporary food services. If we just let them operate and don't, coerce them into getting a temporary food service license. If we don't license them, and something results of that, that's brought back to that temporary food service. If this group of people say that one made me sick, and we didn't license it, didn't talk to them about what's of our exposure for doing nothing.
Is there indeed that kind of exposure that's on the books? So is it more like just something that's logical, or are there actually ordinances that say we have to get the license?
the state, the closest that the state has come is that several counties, they were so irked at the state about the inspection program and the licensures, they said, we're just not gonna do it. I don't know that it was an attorney general or a Department of Public Health and Human Services lawyer. A lawyer made a rendition that was enough that no counties are compelled to do the inspections. You have to do inspections for the licensed food service establishments. That's the county's responsibility. You can't sidestep that. I would confer from that applies to temporary food services also. But temporary food services has changed from a primary state-county responsibility to strictly a county responsibility. The state really has nothing to do with temporary food services anymore. It's like, it's up to you, county. You take care of it. You manage it, collect the fees, apply the standards, and do the inspections that you think is appropriate. So that's worth revisiting on that.
And then the sanitation end of that too, is there, so you have 1,000 people up there with sanitation needs. Is that something you investigate also?
Well, I ask, but there's nothing formal. This would make it formal. It's like, you tell us what you're gonna supply for that, and do that part of it, so.
I'm talking about sewage disposal.
Right. No, the temporary food service permitting process right now has a section for the permitting, but then the organizer is to fill out this section of it and declare what the water is going to be, the wastewater, how he's going to dispose of it. That's their responsibility, and I don't know if we ever got a formal response from Pirate Party people on that. She emailed like 15 times that it's coming. It's going to be mailed to you. I'm sending it to you. And it's like, but it's why I would like to know whether to pursue this is that if the Board of Health isn't thinking that this is something that's necessarily needed, I don't want to spend the time on it. If we can if the board can make a decision today that this has merit and we should do this, then I will keep putting it together. I just grabbed an example, and this is certainly not the final format. It's going to be something quite a bit different than this, but to make something work like this, then I believe that the Board of Health is going to have to adopt a food ordinance, that we're going to have some basic language in there that says, large permits are authorized under the Mineral County Food Ordinance, such and such, so we would go through that process at the same time. And with the food ordinance that could go along with this, or the Board of Health ordinance that would be in regard to food, then we could also address this plan review, because the time up there was one thing, but the plan review for this, that was just a killer too. Just hours and hours of trying to extract information out of them on what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, and if.
Do we have complaints from the property owners surrounding the area at all?
I don't know. Do we have any complaints?
A little bit, but people complain about anything.
About noise or about
here and there a little bit, not extreme. I haven't had. You guys obviously haven't had a whole bunch of calls.
Well,
No, since the original one that took place up there, we had quite a few calls that time, but
Yeah.
haven't had anything to my knowledge.
Well, the complaints
Some of the people
are
like it, but
noise in nature, not necessarily sanitation nature.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
I think the where the complaints
So-
have come.
People complaining about sanitation, I haven't really heard
No.
that.
Okay.
I didn't really hear about that.
We've
I
also
would-
had a lot of porta potties. So.
I would think it'd be something we would need, because as you get more of those large functions up there, I'm sure the fire department would want to know that there's all these people up there, if they can get in or out in case something happens. The sheriff, with that many people, because that mud bog in St. Regis, I couldn't believe how many people drove by our shop, stopped, asked directions, with that whole thing. So, it creates a lot of issues as far as traffic and fire safety, and like you've got on here with first aid services and
Well, and obviously with this process, is one of the things to beat is to take this out to the rural fire departments in those entities and see who wants to sign on to it and not sign on it. I mean, somebody maybe they're less concerned, but this time, I don't think the rural fire department had anything to do with the fire department.
No, fire party.
They hired
were
their
around
own,
for ours.
they hired their own private security, and I didn't know there was private security until I
But see,
got
that would
inside
be
of
sort
it.
of things that I
Yeah.
think the county would want to know, whether they're hiring their private security, whether they've got their own fire.
Well, they
or what
notified you of that,
issues
though,
going
didn't they?
on.
No,
Well, we were notified on the mud bog about that. I don't remember being,
I
on
think-
Mudbog we were,
Didn't
but
you guys send something
For
out?
Silver
when-
Cloud, for our
Yeah.
festival, we did. For
Oh.
Pirate Party, like we rented the property to those guys, and they're really, they did horrible about following up on anything. So it would surprise
Yeah.
me if they did any of that.
Yeah.
yeah,
They were supposed to.
They did.
In our contract, they were supposed to
Mhm.
let you guys all know.
But this doesn't seem especially onerous or anything for someone to fill out and follow through with. If
No,
they're gonna have an
and I-
event
and I-
that large.
and-
It makes
So,
good sense to
yeah.
me, like to have it all this information in one spot for you guys.
Yeah.
Alright.
So,
Well, yeah, I think go ahead and pursue it, Tim, and work
Well,
with
if it-
everybody and see
I-
what we can come up with.
I don't think we need a formal consensus, but if we just have consensus with the board that it's, we're something follow-up, then we'll put together something for probably the next 2 Board of Health meetings and have it for the next season and stuff to see what.
Are these sheets something you put together, Tim, or is this something?
Yeah, there's the permit from who knows where they developed in Missoula County, but pound you into oblivion if they do that. The question that I have is that, do we, we're gonna have to be careful, because is it gonna be an enforceable situation if we don't issue the permit? If the permit is not issued, does that mean the event is canceled? And that's gonna be,
Are there any teeth?
yeah, I mean, that it's, the local people can understand that, but.
We'd have to have a good reason for it. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, not just because you didn't have part of the form filled out, I don't do that. But, so, we need to search that part of it, but I would anticipate that if you have this in order, and what I maybe would like to see is that, maybe I'll get a hold of a couple of the large permit events that were permits issued by Missoula County for some of these different events,
Yeah.
and just get that back to us and see how those looked and what they did and the processing. And
And
stuff.
if there ever was incidences where they had to cancel, for
Yeah.
what reasons, if that's,
Well, I know, they got canceled, somebody kind of canceled the Arbor Day thing, and they moved that to Polson, so. And
Huh.
all these, the Red Ants Pants Festival over in
Mar County.
Mar, but
Over by
White
White
Sulphur
Sulphur,
Springs,
yeah.
do that. I mean, that lady's business is over there and stuff, but that county has one of the strictest ordinances on the face of the earth right now. But they also had an event where 800 people got foodborne illness from
oh, really? Huh?
from the event over there and stuff that they couldn't, and so they took a big time hit over that one.
The red ants got in the food.
Yeah. Well, no, boy, was in the food, but it 3-day event, and the illness wasn't really showing up until after the event. So they exposed everybody, and
With a lot of the GI illnesses, we send samples to the state lab, and then they do something called DNA fingerprinting, where they really dissect those bugs and they can track it all back to one spot. It's how we find out cucumbers from Costco need to be pulled or something like that. So it is really interesting. A lot of the GI stuff, we try to figure it out like that event.
yeah. So anyway, that's kind of where we're standing with that. But I appreciate the gentleman from the West being down here, because we'll get everybody involved in the process, and at least the work session, and get it figured out. We'll get Shannon Anderson in here, and guys from all the representatives from the West End, and we'll sit down and hash it out for the next Board of Health meeting and see how we want to make this work. So that would be good.
Well, any public comment? All right, new business. Air quality update on the Sunrise Fire.
Sure. Well, today is gorgeous. It is amazing. It feels like fall out there today, although I think it's supposed to get warm. So at the health department, Tim's been helping out quite a bit. We have
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys.
we made some handouts to post around on all the fire boards. We're having some problem getting it on there. Barb went to a fire meeting and they said, yep, sure, we'll post them. But we've made 3 contact attempts and they're not getting back to us. So anyways, we are just posting these everywhere that we can. And so everyone's welcome to take one if you'd like. And what it does is it breaks down, it gives you the website to visit to find out real-time air quality things. And then it breaks down the different levels and then by health effect categories and then who's impacted by those categories. And then I also had put together a public service announcement that just goes more in depth about what you can do to protect yourself against wildfire smoke. I wanted to show you a couple links that are really, really helpful. Yeah, this is one of them. So this is a website that's through the Department of Health and Human Services, but they've linked up with the Department of Environmental Quality, and this is specifically made for child care facilities and schools. And so we've gotten these out to all of our schools and all the staff, and it's just another way to kind of convey this information. So everyone's being very smart about exposing our kiddos. So, and then who has heard of NCWeb? So about half of us. Okay, I'll show you where to go and how to get to it. NCWeb is a fantastic website. It gives you updates on all of the wildfires. And you go to the smoke haze report, and then it pulls up a map, and you can find all the air quality monitors. We right now have air quality monitors across the county, which is pretty great. Alberton has one. That one's been consistently working. We had 2 here in Superior at one point, and I'm not sure about the West End in St. Regis area, but you can click on it and it tells you right now this is what your air quality is. Because as you can tell, that smoke comes and goes throughout the day. So really, we're just advising people to use your common sense and be wise about it. If you have any chronic conditions, heart or lung issues, then you need to be more particular. So I'll walk you through that website, and then I can email Candace a link that you can distribute to everyone so you can find it. Are there any questions about air quality stuff?
Well, the question I have, seems to come up quite a bit is, how much protection does a home have when they just close the windows and the doors in a smoke-infested area? I mean, is there significant reduction of particulates inside the home if you keep everything closed? Have you ever seen any data on that?
No, but I imagine it just depends on how airtight the home is, and if they ever open the windows like at night or those kinds of things. We kind of go by if you can see it or smell it, then you're being impacted in some way. And so if a home is particularly leaky and it smells like smoke, then they're getting some of those effects. So I think it's just going to depend on their home.
Does the health department still have any of the masks available?
We do have some masks available, yep, if people want some of that, so, yeah.
Are they masks available on request for purchase, or are they available?
Nope, we can just distribute them.
And they're actually,
So it's a NIOSH.
they're actually effective? I mean,
I can't remember. They are.
The 1
they were good
microgram.
ones.
I don't know, I'd have to go back and look. When Shirley was wearing her FEP hat, Public Health Emergency Preparedness, she had ordered a bunch of them. I know that the regular masks that the dentists wear are not going to protect you, but the N95 or something,
And
NOSH or something.
NIOSH 95
ones.
has to be at least that level.
So I can
I
look.
believe they.
I've never seen that advertised to the public like it's being available, It would be nice if the public knew that something like that was.
I don't think we have too many of them, but yeah, we're happy to share them. That would be just fine. And thanks for bringing that up.
Might be worth talking to the drugstore over here too, that if we anticipate a tough fire season and everything else, that maybe they could get a supply of them in and, but I mean, work with their supplier that we open it, we pay for it, we don't open it, you take it back type thing and stuff.
That's a good idea.
place to distribute.
At least, I mean, we could notice people that, hey, they're there at that place.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Luckily, we're not in the situation Sealy Lake's in where they closed down the town and said everybody needs to leave. That's pretty bad, but I'm glad that our smoke is kind of coming on.
Jan, I think Barb might have put a link to the NC Web on the county website.
Oh, she probably did.
She did.
That Barb is pretty on it. So here's the website.
Is this Doofus or NC Web or Doofus?
NC
This
Web.
is NC Web.
Oh,
I'm not
NC
sure
Web.
what doofus is.
Huh?
What's doofus?
Department of Health, Human Services?
Oh.
It's all right.
It's abbreviation.
Boy, Jen, you haven't been around long enough.
I
have you?
have not.
Oh, come on.
Okay, so then you find, these are basically 167 events in the Pacific Northwest, or the northwest part of the country, and you find the sunrise siren. Yesterday was on page 1, so I wonder if we have been
We're losing our status?
losing our status.
We're
which
on
is a
page
good
one
thing,
anymore?
yeah.
Thank God.
Oh, there we are.
Oh, you saw it? Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
I-
you're right. You click on your fire, and then this will give you all of the most updated information. There's a lot. It'll tell you up at the top, incident updated how long ago, so an hour and 22 minutes ago. You go to the right side of the page and scroll basically to the bottom.
So that smoke haze report?
Yep, the smoke haze report is where
That's
you want to
cool.
go, which is confusing because if you read the other options, there's Montana DEQ air quality monitoring, there's smoke monitor data from Quartz Creek Station, low smoke monitoring data. There are a lot of different monitors, but the best one to go to is the smoke haze report. And then you scroll over. These are all the monitors that are out there. Scroll over. Let's see here. What you might be missing on.
That's the Superior, and then green is
So here's the
Albertson's.
Superior one. And it gives you the color, basically, for your air quality that coordinates. And then here's the Alberton. It's pretty nice. So today we're doing really well. And then it shows you the active fires. And it's just a really helpful website. Any questions? I think even if you click on, let's
So
go on
Alberton
Superior
is 8?
here.
Was what?
What's 8 for Alberton? What was
You mean quality?
Yeah, for,
You want me to go to Alberton?
no, well, you did, but what was the, it tells you the instant reading on there. It's 8.8? Wow. I mean, it's been in the 50s for the last 3 days and bouncing up from the 50s, so.
Oh, my computer's too old school. So basically, you can click on this, go to the monitoring site, and I think it gives you more in-depth reviews.
So the nowcast, the definition of nowcast is the amount of haze or
The amount of
particulate?
particulates in the air. So
Particulates
it's
in
the
the air.
micrograms per cubic meter per air. And they, when they use PM10 is the particulate size that's worst for the lungs, and especially if you have compromised lungs.
Huh.
So that's about all I have.
All right, well, thank you.
Well,
Very
actually,
interesting.
Tim stopped by the office, was that just earlier this week?
Yeah.
And brought by some maps. And so he's offered to make maps for the schools or anyone who really wants one, which is helpful. I remember at the department head meeting, I said, how do you know how far 1.3 miles is? And so he gave us the maps of our area, plotted out the health department, and plotted out points for reference points for us. So that's great. And I'm probably going to offer that to both St. Regis and Alberton schools if you don't mind.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, St. Regis, I might have to go out there and say which can you see out there, but I wanted to pick a place that I know people could see. It won't be hard in Alberton, that'll be easy, it'll just be across the river and stuff, so.
These monitors that they have on this website, they move. They're Forest Service ones, so they move them all over wherever their priorities are.
So the food and consumer from the Department of Health and Public Services called up and said, oh, we've got all these resources, here's the page, they just emailed it to us. Barb indicated that she had most of that, but maybe I'll just have Candace forward that page to both you and Barb, just so you can see that. But in they have a whole toolkit for smoke-related items, and there's good data and good things available on there, and they put that together. But I told them, I said, you're a little bit late for the fire events, especially in Superior. But anyway, they're doing something. But then at the end of the meeting, the air quality specialist and the food and consumer, he said, well, is there something that we can possibly do in the future? And I said, what you can do in the future is that make a air monitor available to us at the earliest part of the event and not waiting for the Forest Service to stick it somewhere, and so that we can put it where the population that we want to be able to speak to, that we can have it there and we can have it early. And they're like, oh, and I think, because we've talked about it several times. We talked about it after the Mullen West fire. It was like, oh, yay, we're all gonna, get that done. So maybe this time it might come something up. So I don't know if Sealy has a temporary or they have a permanent. I think they have a permanent air monitor up there because of the air quality district. So, but anyway, I think that's going to be just as important in the early part of the fire as waiting for a Type 3 team can't order that stuff. A Type 2 team talks about it, but here when the Type 1 incident team comes in, then they have all those resources to pull it in and bring it in. So we have to wait for the fire to get really roaring before we can get the resource.
I'd say that's been one of the biggest challenges, is just trying to track down who has the information, where we go to get it, how we compile it. I think they're getting better, probably with these resources. She just shared that email you were telling me about. I think they're working on some of this stuff, but a lot of times you have to reinvent the wheel. Like, we made this from scratch. In my mind, there should just be one made from the Department of Health and Human Services. We'll probably share this with them and say, hey, can you look this over and distribute it however you feel is appropriate.
But that one there, that's...
Yep.
So when do you think Barb might have picked that up?
She knew about this last year. So we usually give these to the schools right away. But if you're a senior citizen with COPD and all sorts of stuff, this really this doesn't speak to you. You're not a child, you're not going to physical education class, So it just needs to be across the board.
Do you have the name of the manufacturer or the name of the product that's the mask itself? So we can take a look and see just what kind of protection is offered with that mask. Is there some data like that?
Yep, I'll have to go back to the health department and look, though. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know right now.
All right. It would be really good to know.
It would be.
Because if you look down through this chart and you see all of the nowcasts and so forth, oh, I fit in here. Okay, what can I do about it? It says I'm healthy and I have lung disease. What can, and it goes on to say reduce smoke exposure down this corner, which is good. But if there was something that was really protective, as well as we could be without a really sophisticated mask, this would be a somewhat interim stopgap anyway.
Yeah.
It's disposable, I assume. I don't know how long you could use it. It'd be nice to have an article about that somehow. This is available. This is what kind of protection it offers. How many times can you use it? And what's it cost? It'd be really good for the future. Maybe not this year, but
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yes, we distributed them when we were doing the flu immunizations as
years
well,
ago.
with a packet.
Buy 10 of them for $29.
okay.
Huh?
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Is
On Amazon, you can get 10 of them for $29.
Did it give the name of the product? What is it?
I think she'll print it out.
Okay.
I think that they just say, essentially, stay inside and leave town if it's bad. The big they, you know, which isn't that helpful if you have limited resources and you can't go anywhere and you have to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Even
So
people
you
at
need
Sealy
something.
Lake, stuck around, some of them. you know.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, if you think that the fire's coming towards your property and structures and things, you don't wanna pull out and leave it alone just to see if somebody else is gonna take care of it. So.
I like that idea. We did publish my public service announcement about air quality stuff in Mineral Independent, I think 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3, something like that. So just the regular
okay.
information. So that could be an update, the things you could do in the meantime.
You know, if
Checking with the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
the Forest Service is pretty possessive of their boards and stuff, but
I know.
I still think we could try to get something put on all their leaderboards.
Oh, I think you were outside when I was telling him. They said initially when Barb was at the meeting, they said, yep, we'll put them up. But we've tried 3 times to follow up with that because they're still not up. And so we're not getting anywhere with that. They are very possessive though.
Yeah.
Yeah, very particular.
What's that?
The Forest Service with their boards, we want to post our air quality flyers, information about.
Okay.
on them. We just need them to put it on there. Maybe
I-
you could be the person.
I will do it. I'll
Okay.
take care of it tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Yay, Lori.
All right, then I guess the next thing on the agenda is Flat Creek 5-year review process.
Oh, yes, that's coming up, and partly maybe for Jen. Peggy obviously kind of paid attention to that when she was at the health department, but EPA is required when they conduct a Superfund site, have a cleanup, that there's an automatic 5-year review that gets kicked in. My understanding is that is an outside contractor, and they have to generate a report and see what was accomplished, how things, and follow up for anything, especially for the ICs, whatever we're talking on. So if there's something set forth like that, we want to follow up on that. They want to. I think at some point in time there's going to be a public hearing, but the first 2 days, the 27th and 28th, pretty much the 27th is that they're just going to meet with various people, interview them, talk to them about it, and see if there's any feedback from local people about, do they think it was a good job, poor job, did it not address certain things, try to gain that public commentary to see what was done as far as the OU1. So.
Are they going to advertise that to show up, or? How are they?
They're not going to necessarily advertise this because it's not for the public meeting. There's going to be, I think, a follow-up public meeting. The contractor comes in and tries to assess from the more involved people what's going on and how things are taken care of. Especially for the ICs, they want to see if that's working and how it's been handled and stuff. And, I think it's going to be not hard, but it's going to be interesting to try to convince them that we've only had 4 or 5 projects in the town of Superior around the area that has involved soils and movement and doing that part of it. So, but Roger and I are going to work together here and get all of our little paperwork together in a nice little pile for them and have that. And so they'll work each other against us. They're going to go over and talk to Roger, and then they'll talk to me, and then no, I don't. I'll do it, but I'm not sure about this contractor thing. And I don't know if we invited something of a higher level of review or something, because we did develop a database that has all of the EPA tracking in it and the letters and the notifications.
I still have never gotten anything back on the results of the testing on my property, whether yay or nay or what, which would be kind of nice.
I think we have it.
I will look someday.
But I'm going to use this period to point out to them, which we have discussed for probably 3 years, that we still have a data gap, because RY1 to RY 669 or whatever it is, from in
Got
here,
those
from
numbers.
500 to something, we've still not been able to produce a letter that says this is what happened to your piece of property. And there's a gap in there that,
Maybe, yeah.
no,
No?
you're a lot lower on the thing than that. So. But, so anyway, but we did build a lot of that back into the database and have that done so that, you know, we do have a good database. We've been able to, I don't know, we probably supplied 8-9 letters to people that have been interested in property, not having to send them to the EPA, not having the EPA go to a contractor to find the letter to hold things up. So it's been advantageous that way. So, but anyway, if you hear from somebody, a contractor, or the EPA on the 27th or 28th, that's what it's going to be about. It's just this 5-year review and see that things are in order, I guess. I don't know if they come up with specific recommendations if something's not or what. But hopefully before that time, the owner of the Bellevue Motel, I can get a release for, because I really want a soils release for testing that property, because as far as I know, that's the one property that I know of that hasn't been tested. So, you know of any others, Roger?
No.
No. So, I mean, coverage on our map says pretty much everything else was tested. So. Well, I shouldn't say that. Who lived kitty corner of the old city where you building down there?
Victor's,
Victorious.
didn't they refuse at some point? Did they still?
I think they finally got,
Because you
Their
know, they're
permission.
gone and the kids own it, so it'd be kind of.
But I think the kids came back in
Yeah, I
and
think
said
that
we
they
wanted
did.
it tested, and they just happened to catch a cycle when Duke was here
Oh, cool.
in town. So that was the two that
yeah,
I know
that's all I
about.
can think of was her and then there was a few, but they got it that last time.
And then Shirley was a holdout.
Shirley was-
Those obstinate people that just won't let the EPA and the black government
I
come
got
in.
the letter, though.
Huh?
I even got the letter. For being a holdout, right?
Yeah.
Are you talking about September 27th and 28th or August? Okay.
September.
That's right.
So that's all for that part of it.
Set next meeting date.
No good time. Let's go for December.
Okay.
Let's leave-
Christmas.
Leave November alone.
Yes, it's got to be after his goat hunting
December.
season's over.
Who's good? Oh, did he do that? Did you?
So you can either I'm going hunting or you get my resignation. It's your choice.
You can go hunting, guaranteed.
And
we hope you get something.
December 8th, well, crispy critter goat, they're all burnt up in the swamp.
Yeah.
Scared.
Go to the
December 8th?
scapegoats then.
December 8th.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Oh, that would work.
December 8th,
Do we-
10 o'clock.
Is that open and thing? Okay. Now,
All right.
give me a little more time for the large event things too. So.
All right.
Go on your vacation.
I will adjourn this meeting unless there's any other things anybody can think of.
Good.
Thank you all for coming.
Here, and we got on the agenda on the agenda, it's the Bauer petition for Plat abandonment, Sherlew Avenue.
So, public setting, public hearing, I would suggest for the commissioners that I could introduce things if you want to hear from Bauer's first before I go through the findings, or I can go through the findings and point out things to you that is very pertinent to the proposal for their petition to abandon a portion of the Sherlew Avenue out there. Going to require a little bit of, let's go back and think how they thought 1904 maybe, I don't know. That's when it was platted, and the 1904 old plat makes for some unique experiences out there, or conditions. So if you want me to proceed, or if you just want to ask the Bauers for their thoughts and opinions first, however you would like to do that.
Okay. So I looked at the map a little bit, and it looks like, can you explain, Tim, the real photo overhead versus the Amador? What are we looking at there on the?
Okay. So this would have been the Sherlew Avenue. All of these notations on the Amador town site are interesting because it has been altered, doctored, changed significantly over the years. So this was platted in 1904. The gentleman that was the president of the company that signed this is James Sherlew. In doing so, he felt that his road should be special, so it happened to be 100 feet wide. A lot of the other roads are lesser widths, but they seem to, there's quite a few of them that are 75 feet in width on there. So in 1904, they had a totally different perspective about platting roads in there, and the language on the plat over here is interesting because it says not only roadways, gas works, electrical works, but it the connotation is the street railroads. Okay, so if you start looking in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the majority of the towns and areas there, mode of transportation was a street railroad. It was either pulled by a horse, or then it was pulled by, or then it was electrified, but they were all on rails. So that took extra wide streets to put in that and a street and different things in there. So there was probably a basis in that, I think, of why these right-of-ways were the widths that they were. So being platted in there over time and years, then in town was incorporated in 48. I think the map was pretty uniform at that time. They picked up one of these lines and just went right down through the middle of the Amador town site. They didn't really even too particular about whether this lot was in or out. In the 60s and the Horning edition, some different things started transpiring for vacations, and in 79 then they came in here and straightened out some lot lines and did the annexation and changed a few boundaries in there. Also, when the new hospital was built up in here, this was all technically vacated for the airport, and then when the interstate came through, the interstate basically takes out this whole strip here goes away with the interstate, and then the airport is impacted, so it gets moved. So there were changes to that. This section over here became the Riverside Acres. The Hornings replatted this. They vacated it. I'm a little bit curious of why on this side of things, the town was very willing to vacate streets and alleys. They did a number of those vacations. On this side of things over here, this was outside the platted site. Whether the county commissioners at that time didn't feel like that was germane or should do that. Anyway, there was a court-ordered split, or a court-ordered vacation of that. And I don't know whether they wanted procedures or I didn't do enough research, but anyway, this was all vacated and then turned into the Riverside Acres, and can't really pick that up in here. But these lots all sitting down in there, they were platted at a later date in the 90s, I think early 90s, that they were platted down there on that side of it. So the town boundary went out to that distance and moved over a block there. Then the Greens at Cedar Creek was proposed, and there was another annexation out here, and then more recently the redo of the process up there. So the town annexation is out there, and that's kind of gets us to this map. And then also this block 66 in here, the Stelling did this re-subdivision of that each half block of the 65 and 66 and configured them into much larger lots than these 25-foot lots that are up here. And then in this section up here, this returns back to the 25-foot lot. So the actual town boundary is on the east side of this amended plat over here for this, and Chicago Avenue is there. And then because of the hospital and annexation, then the town boundary is down there. And then on this side, the town boundary, this would be a straight line along 4th, that the town boundary is on that side for the current annexation, and town limits would be basically sitting around this half block and these. This is a block in Amador, but it's not lots. I've always heard that referred to as Oliverville. It's just been, one of the people that signed one of these original plats, their name was Olive. I don't know if that has to do with it, but anyway, this wasn't lots. These are all tract and lots out of 67 in here. Then this one was the plat says that they were for community centers, meeting centers, and different things, and I presume that was the premise of having those, not having tracks in those lots in there. So that kind of brings us up to date about how the town is basically was over in this section and has moved this way and through annexation. And so this 100-foot wide strip through here is the widest street in the plat. And then again, this is not currently in the town of Superior, and that's why you're hearing this. So the Bauers have asked, but you want to be real careful about what they did. They were asking for a 100 by 30-foot strip, but I expanded that to 150 because if you're going to act on that, I don't think you want to leave something that would not be in their purview there. If you're gonna take off part of it, I think then it would be kind of an all or none thing to do that, just because of the mechanics of it. Utilities at this time in this area, the town had a major revamp of their water system. They looped around the hospital, came down Sherlew. These streets on this plat here, on this side, they were vacated in the 70s, and then this became the hospital, the sewer service. There's a manhole sitting right here on this corner right now. That's the closest. This sewer extension came down Chicago Avenue. So the sewer is at this point. Sewer has been extended down 4th because of the River Ridge Phase 2 second proposal down here where this replatted this upper section into lots, and so sewer and water is available for those lots off of 4th Avenue in there. So we have sewer here, and then through the water revamp, a water line goes through there, and Roger, you'd have to tell me what size. I was
It's 12 inch.
It is a full 12
Yeah.
inch. Where's your loop line going up across to the other side? of the
To
interstate?
go across, it's
Yeah.
it's down there by the Jehovah's Witness Church, where we actually go under to go.
Okay, so that, this was to just provide equalization of pressure and
Right. It used to just go down Brooklyn. Went down Brooklyn, and so then we looped it, put a big 12 inch, and then went down there and tied it in.
What year was that put in?
When was it? It's 2008.
Yeah, okay, but who went first? I was asking Candace, the River Ridge Estates, they extended water and sewer after you put the water loop line in?
We required them to come in. They were just gonna come, where's the end here? They were just gonna come here and stop, and then we wanted them to come in and tie in all the way. So that was the Golf Course Association. And then we came in and tied into what they put in there. So
You tied into their
Yeah.
extension afterwards then?
And then that's on Sherlew, Roger?
Yeah,
It's on the east.
it's on the east side.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the water line that's running right.
Yeah, it'd be on
Pretty much.
Ron and Aaron's side of the street.
Yeah, it's just a little bit off the pavement.
Got you.
So
I guess
So-
I just don't remember when that was done.
this went right by your house. 2008 and 2009. Somewhere in there.
Didn't notice an excavator out in front of your house there?
I think you're wrong. I don't know when it was done. You remember?
I don't.
Kind of. Were you there then? What year did you move
So,
98?
so this large diameter water line is sitting on this side, just off the traveled way out there. Overhead power comes down a kind of a main line off here. It dumps into a couple overhead poles that get split off to the houses in here, and that's kind of the same way of this thing. This alley is fairly well encroached upon. I mean, it's technically a 20-foot alley through there, but it doesn't appear to be an alley at this time. So anyway, utilities down there, and like I say, then their sewer is to this point, the sewer's down this point on that way. So part of the future process is that if annexation was to occur and town services were to be afforded to those, since you have sewer over here and you want to try to pick up joining, then sewer would most likely be there, and then sewer would most likely be there to pick those up. So this is still from McKinley West. Those are still viable platted town site lots. It's under the Moats ownership. I've heard a few things from them over the years, but nothing that I would be basing any opinion about what might happen to that property, but it's out there, and there is a lot of platted lots out there. So anyway, then this street is abandoned, so the hospital, county, i.e. all of us, anyway, we did a water line easement through this section around here to facilitate the town's upgrade and not so much an extension, but as an upgrade of their water system. And then again, this is in public right away over here. So. The telephone, there's a box here, there's a box here. I'm presuming there's something underground out here in the front. Where they go with that, whether they're underground going down Sherlew, or I don't know if I'm presuming that the telephone comes underground to your house somewhere.
Our box is on the opposite side of the house to the garage.
Does it come underground, or it doesn't come from a pole?
No, it's in
They're underground. So I didn't verify where Blackfoot is running through there with their cable.
Well, Bruce would know.
Yeah, I should have asked Bruce this morning about that. So anyway, I know that they have underground cable all along the right of way right there, but crossing that or how they access those houses, I'm not sure. There's obviously cable boxes or telephone boxes all along Fort there that they run that out there, part two in that right of way and stuff. My understanding of maintenance now is that the Jason Mineral County Road Department, they plow snow for the hospital up there, and then they pick up a number of these streets up in there to remove the snow when they're in that area. They have a route up there to do that. So then these other streets in Chicago and this way is Rogers and the town's responsibility for snow removal. But that is an important point in this proposal there. So that, without specifically looking at a number of things in my findings of fact, I think that's what I did, is summarize that for you, and there's some adjoining decisions that need to be made, whether in the process of this, if this proceeds forward, then procedurally there's a few things, do you want to have an appraisal of that property? Is that, obviously the Bauers cannot take possession of this property unless there's an amended plat, and that gets resurveyed and added to their property. That would be an understanding that would be part of the order to, well, it's not part of the order to vacate. The commissioners, you can't really add conditions in an order to vacate. You can vacate the area, but you would have to have just an understanding that these other processes would follow along with that, and that's that there'd be this amended plat, and it would be examined, and then there would have to be a deed of transfer if you went that route. So with that, then I think we should probably just hear public comment, and I'll talk about the other pieces of paperwork that I've prepared for your considerations.
What do you think, Roger? You know the streets in the area there.
Well, for our concern, it's not our property, but when I first looked at the thing, it looked like the property was what they wanted was gonna come right up to the pavement, which I didn't think would be good. So we went out and measured it, and there's a 10-foot easement that would still be there.
10 feet of open ground from the
Yeah.
edge of the pavement.
And you could still run the sewer down the middle of the street, it's just in the future, that'd be a lot more expensive than running down off the side. So for us, if we were to ever annex, it'd be nice to have that strip. So that's was my only concern.
And what about the other side of the street, Tim? Does it have 10-foot easement
Well,
up to
Yeah,
property?
that's the question I had. Is it 30 or 40 on Aaron's side as well, going all the way to the north?
Is the real germane question, is Sherlew lined up in the middle of that 100-foot easement, or is it kind of offset to one side or the other? It appears that it's fairly close to the middle. So from the center of the street going out to property lines, there would generally be about 50 feet on either side of the center line of the road.
I got 50 feet from our fence to the edge of the road is what I got. Is that what you got, Roger?
I got about 40.
Yeah, it's
So
40.
give or take, because I measured from your fence 30 feet, and then it left me
Because our
10
fence
feet.
was like from the survey, and our fence is inside
So
the property line.
the right-of-way width on Aaron's side is the same then, Tim?
Pretty
30,
Approximately.
40.
I mean, if
Yeah, pretty close.
What I probably should have done is put a tape to the ground and went, but there's not a real fence over here. I mean, I could have done over in here. This isn't really marked, but, so I didn't walk across there. But I think the road shades to Aaron and Bruce Berry's side maybe a little bit, but then again, we're only talking feet, because from their fence to the traveled surface is 40 feet, and that's a 20-foot width, so it's close.
And that's how we measured it to allow a 10-foot, like an additional 10-foot for snowplow and stuff like that.
And for us, it makes sense. I mean, I guess it's up to you guys, but we've mowed it ever since we've lived there. Obviously, we haven't watered it. It's been a battle keeping our lawn green. Eventually, someday, I may want to build a storage building there to get the snowmobiles out of the alley.
But I
That was
mean,
my thought.
if you look at this picture, Aaron's done it, Bears do it, Rice do it, and that's what, we've all already taken possession of it, because all this stuff is attached to our house. He doesn't want his front yard looking crappy, Barry's don't, right? So, if you look, all this is right away. All this is right away. They water it, they mow it. Aaron's got his fence, they water it, they mow it. You know what I mean? So it's all right there. So anyway, this is what we're talking about potentially someday, building to be able, as like a storage for like snowcats in the summer, boats in the winter, to be able to put it. He talks about alley encroachment over here. This is alley encroachment. This is our snowcats. Jeff has a big pile of wood, you know what I mean, because we don't have anywhere to store. So that's what we'd like to do here, is to put something like this back by the fence to be able to put, so we don't have alley encroachment over here. So nothing junky looking or anything like that. So that's and then, it wouldn't be digging a big deep foundation. It'd be potentially a, 4-inch cement slab. Something like that, to be able to store, something in the future. So we're just trying to go about it the legal way, and not just throw up something there and, you know.
It's an awful wide right of way. I mean, in town, our
It's long.
biggest one is 75, and that's part of Fourth. The rest of them are all 50, and that's plenty. You know, you got pretty much a 25-foot pavement and then 12 and a half on each side for right of way.
And it's weird city limits, like Clark Conroe's out of city limits, B. Kenny's out of city limits.
Clark's actually in now.
Is he in now?
It is.
His
And then-
septic failed, so he had to.
Oh, there you go. And then B's out still.
Yeah, she's out because in the infinite wisdom of our council, they let him stay out, and they should have never.
And
Always
then,
surrounded.
you know, Jeff's out, and, you know, 20 years ago, George Stanger came to us when he owned Albertville before you guys got it. And all of his septic systems were just, the people, you know, all the renters were flushing dirty diapers or whatever. And he said, man, do you guys want to be in? You guys want to hook
He
to the
wanted
city
to
and
run.
stuff? And we said, no, you know, not really. And so then he changed his mind and just started, you know, replacing stuff and whatnot. So we're still, you know, we're out. So that's how that all went down.
Well, we already have our own sewer and
Yeah.
well, so it made sense not to.
Yeah, so
As long as you
anyway,
have
that's,
room for a replacement at some
Mhm.
point. If that failed.
we did,
then
yeah, we've
Right.
already done that, so.
Their sewer was replaced in 2000, but it was under the old county standards. The current county sewer regulations require them to connect to the town of Superior if it's economically feasible. That was not a provision of our previous sewer regulations. So if any of those sewer systems fail along that street in there and they can economically connect to the public sewer, then they're obligated to do that. That
By
it's-
economically, you mean cheaper to hook up to it or put in another drain field?
Well, yeah,
Either or.
there's a standard that says if your sewer system, you know, the cost of your sewer system is 3 times more than the cost of your,
Right.
you know, there's a standard that you can do in there. But the first thing that should be done is that they would approach the town, the conditions, and maybe just let Roger speak to this, but if somebody was to opt to connect to the sewer, then the town is gonna wanna see annexation, so.
Yeah, that's usually the policy.
Annexation is tricky for the outside of the town limit person right now, because they also have an ordinance that says that your well has to be abandoned and you have to connect to the water, so.
And I talked to Ron.
There's very little incentive for people to connect to the,
Yeah, what we've done in the past as far as the water, if you had it, you were grandfathered in. But once it's sold to new people, then you immediately have to hook up. That's how we did the other ones in town.
okay. Appreciate that, because I would.
And for,
Yeah.
and for this, there would be no, I mean, there would be no water, no septic. This would just be, you know, storage.
So that's something I don't think that was clear before, is that, you know, whether they even had a discussion. I don't think they probably would have been a germane discussion, because trying to run to the nearest sewer when in 2000 would have been farther down the street. So, but anyway, that's just a point that I wanted to bring up, is that by adopting more current sewer regulations, that is something that the owner would have to investigate whether they could connect to that. So feasibility, then that's going to be an interesting discussion.
Well, it seems like a pretty big right-of-way, and like you said, the road doesn't even use all of it, neither do the utilities, and it's contiguous, so it makes sense on that level, but I always just concerned about fairness. What are we gonna do with the rest of the right-of-way? What about the other neighbors? Are they gonna have opportunity to
Bruce-
buy a little bit, or have some, or?
Bruce Berry called. He wasn't upset, but he was very concerned that he couldn't attend the meeting today. He says, I'm not sure about supporting against the proposal one way or the other. But he at least asked that you don't make a decision today on the granting of the petition, that you put that off so that he would at least have an opportunity to come in and talk to the board and voice his opinions about the process.
So is there room on his side of the street to buy a little bit too, if he wanted to?
Well, I think there's about 3, maybe 4 issues that I would like to throw out to the board. I think the one issue is that if you grant one, then you've set the precedent, and anybody along that street is going to come right back in and ask about abandonment, would be what I would predict. At least somebody's going to ask for additional area because of the width of the street out there. At that point in time, then it's not, to do something in a piece-by-piece process is going to be very, very difficult and not serve the town well in the future. So my suggestion is that until somebody has looked and assessed at that area out there, where the utilities are going to go, how the utilities are going to go in there, and what you need, and then put that in a plan that says, okay, we know in the future that we want this much road right-of-way, therefore we can dispose of this much of the right-of-way for that, and work that out with the town of Superior so that they're satisfied with it, that they know what's going on, because our subdivision regulations and memorandum of understanding says that any actions like this have to be coordinated with the town of Superior. This was presented to them, but again, they, to sit there and just walk in and give this presentation to them, they all were kind of like, huh, okay. And Roger.
Well, what was the outcome of the town council meeting? I was unable to attend.
Was send me down here.
Roger's on vacation,
what was
so.
the outcome, Roger?
They just wanted me to come and see what was going on and how it would affect a future annexation.
Right.
They didn't sound like they would be against it, but you don't know. I wouldn't think so. To me, as my point of view, I would narrow that down and do it all in one thing, give it to them and give it to them, instead of doing it like that. As long as I could go down there and look and say, I have room for a sewer here, and we've already got the water in there. And if we can get the sewer on the other side, I would think they'd be fine with it.
No, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't see in the future, but I've lived here my entire life, 53 years, and what I'm seeing is I think our town is shrinking. I think people that are moving here are moving out of town. Personally, but like I said, I can't predict the future either.
What's Aaron? Do you have any comment?
I'm just here to listen.
Oh.
And I'm kind of with Roger. I mean, I don't have any concerns with them having that done. But like he's saying, or you're setting a precedent that, if the Bauers are gonna get it, the Wrights should get it, the Berries should get it, and we should get it. Unless we're all willing to, I'm willing to buy mine if I have to. I mean, I wouldn't mind having the piece that goes straight down, you see Oliverville, and see how the road curves? Well, that's actually supposed to go straight between Fowler's and that house on the corner.
Yeah, go ahead, point.
This street is actually supposed to go straight.
So we'd come off the end of that piece
Okay.
right there.
And so what you're
And I
saying?
kind of maintain this part. I don't really do much out here where Jason takes care of all that. But
So this piece here is owned by the county, and the county right-of-way just goes across that. So you don't per se need to have an easement for property that you own. So, but it does, that piece out there on that corner out there, and that's one thing about when the search and rescue and the potential hospital and that part of it and everything else. That's why I felt that it was important to stop things over here, because we haven't, there's something to deal with out there on that corner. It provides access to 8 places, 6 out there. I mean, there's 3 trailers, the tire shop, Motz's,
Right.
and the church. And, the others on the corner here can, technically, but I don't know what traffic, how much traffic gets going out there and stuff.
Not very much, but.
No, it's pretty
But
quick.
it, you know, it kind of,
Most
right now,
of it goes
the-
down Fourth Avenue.
the area is, to me, it seems like you really should step back, study it, take a look at it, and try to coordinate with the town and get a long-term perspective about that particular section in there. You know, primarily from the standpoint that you have the town limits already extended out there and we haven't done a lot of doing that. And then, you know, at some future point, if there's an abandonment procedure, then take an abandonment position that, petition that just includes all those people, and then everybody's gonna know what's their responsibility. It's gonna be one fell swoop. You can do the amended lot of all of these lots and blocks out of that and define it and decide, you know, yes, we can do without this much area, but it would still be nice to have this much area and define where that is and where the utilities can go and just look at that whole thing is what I would be suggesting to the.
Well, I don't have a problem with, I mean, if we want to share, if all the four of us on the block want to go together and get like share surveyors, we can get everything, you know what I mean? I have no problem with that whatsoever, but I don't want this to stall.
That's, I was just gonna ask,
We've
how,
been doing this forever already, and I don't want it just to like get lost in the shuffle. and
what kind of
Right.
time frame would we be
Right.
looking at, Tim?
Right.
What is the red, what's this line?
Water main.
No.
No, that's the property line.
I think that's the 100
Supposedly.
foot.
Okay, because those
yeah.
are 10 feet off of
Right.
berries
right.
in our house.
And yeah,
They're
take
right
all
at
of
the
those
front.
and adjust them to some degree. So,
Here's a better picture, Aaron.
There's a little red line, it's, you know, it's almost right on, I think that's the 100 foot, 'cause when I measured it, it was way out into their
Here,
property.
Aaron, you can have this.
See, there's a 100 foot, and that's right on our porch. There's berries.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah,
And we spread them.
and on our side, it's right on our line.
No, yours
Here's
is,
yours right
yours is
here.
right, yours is, that's the corner of your house, there's
Oh,
right.
okay.
See how close it is on this? I'm saying if we're gonna
So-
reassess it, let's go from center line to center
Now we can figure it
line.
out.
But your
Make it easy.
measurement on your side
I
is
don't know
probably the same
what
as
to
this
be,
one.
so.
Mhm.
Actually, see, I think
That's
this
strip
street
of
is, this
ground.
is supposed to go straight.
Yeah, that's road
See, and then they jogged it. It's
Yeah.
actually supposed to go
Was
straight.
Right.
Mhm.
So it is more on our
Yeah,
side.
but you can see how wide that is
Yeah.
from property line to property line. so-
Right. Right. But I'm curious about the timeline question.
Right.
the timing would be who's gonna pay for what level of information that you wanna deal with. Surveyor, go out there and locate, 4 more pins on the, at least the 4 places, locate both property pins, and tie that down there, and, at that point in time, then have somebody give us an assessment about how the, future sewer could go through there if it was annexation, develop that information and take it back to the town council so that they're fully informed. And it's gonna take a few months to do that, but to do 1 out of potentially 4, like you say, you know, that it might turn out that 30 feet that they originally, you know, 100 looked for, fine, but practically speaking, maybe it's going to be a strip that's less than that. So, for this reason, but we don't know those reasons at this time because there's not a real mechanism. So, who's responsible for paying for what? You know, if the commissioners want to hire a surveyor and a consulting engineer to give an assessment of that, of how that whole area is going to be sewered in the future, then, you know, that's something you'd have to decide on doing. If you
So
want
is it up to the 4 of us homeowners to get together and be the push on this, or what, I guess, what do we do?
that would be a
We've
great
been
step,
doing
is that
it,
if the 4 area homeowners come in there and said that we're willing to cover these costs for that so we can provide the commissioners with the information and the town for the information, then that would be great, because
Because the majority, we've done a lot of, you know what I mean, we've done a lot of it already, so do we, I mean, are you guys interested, or?
I'm interested, the only reason I'm here, I'm not here trying, I'm just saying that if we're gonna do it, it all needs to be fair for all, because I mean.
I agree.
Yeah. But my thing is, I kinda had an idea that the easement is actually closer to our homes than yours. So I mean, if we're gonna do it, then let's reassess it from the center of Sherlew, 50 feet. And then, and I don't care if we reassess my taxes, whatever, because I have more property than you, but, that's all I'm saying.
And I've got a question for Roger. So let's say we do this, and you want to put the sewer line on our side. That 10-foot chunk, is that enough ground to put it in right there?
Yeah.
Okay, so that wouldn't be a problem.
It's the same where we figured for snow removal.
Okay.
Yeah. You can run right up there.
So you wouldn't have to dig up the street. You could put it in there. Okay.
You can put it in there. You can put it, we put them, they're down the streets in the middle. It's just in the future, that's more expensive. So we'd rather go along right away.
So that problem would be solved.
It would, yeah, and it's not necessarily that it would go there. Most in-town sewers are in the alleys, because then you get both sides. But Stelling's already brought the sewer to the middle, up
Right.
front, so then it might move better to the next street for this particular case.
Okay.
And that's why in the future, because the town council, they said we're not even looking at annexation.
No,
right now.
there's no reason. The only reason we'd annex is if you guys had to because of your failed sewers. Otherwise, we're not gonna annex.
But you have a sewer at your house, right? And I think
I have sewer at my house, and
They're
then
all
there's
septic.
Yeah, I
one,
think we all are.
2, 3,
and wells.
there's 5 at Oliver Mountain. 4.
I think I put the view in the back there.
Yeah, we all know.
I mean, it's a natural progression to annex. Because you're above and below is already in.
Right.
So if it were to come, that would be a natural way to go.
Well, I know that they're on a timeline, but I kind of agree that we should maybe wait for more information and Mr. Berry to chime in and possibly, I don't know. I might want to go out and look at it too, just to see. I'd like it to be fair and equitable, whatever we do.
We
And
have,
I can call Jeff Wright and let him know
Yeah.
what we're thinking.
I mean, I guess we just started looking, we just wanted to do it like the legal, we didn't know these guys were interested, and we just started looking at it. If we're gonna build something solid, we wanted to do it
Yeah,
the
bank.
right way. It's not like parking something there,
Yeah.
or that you can move. We wanted to build something decent that
Mhm.
wasn't gonna look like crap
Yeah, and when you-
on our property, and.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we just were, Bruce and I were talking about it, we just wanted to make sure that, I talked to Rhonda, she doesn't remember a water line going in, we've been in the house since 98, so.
Are you guys sleeping?
Must have been. I think you need to check.
You're gonna have to drill for water over there, Aaron.
We had a hospital board meeting yesterday and this was brought up. And, just because the street does go up by the hospital and, they looked at it and they didn't see, because they have, out over to here. And, they had no problem with changing, abandon it and whatever, so.
And T-Bone called me yesterday, and he's like, "What are you looking at doing?" I'm up here walking around, and where's the cool chickens and whatever. But and he said, "I got no problem here." So
Well, I talked to T-Bone, and he's in agreement that we need more information before we proceed with this, so. I would really suggest that you just take the denial of the petition and just close this out. Let's all regroup, decide the methodology and what information that you want. And I'll work with the landowners out there, and we would basically put a new petition for abandonment that would involve all of the participating parties and I think in the end run, the shared cost might be even more palatable to all the people out there if they knew that they're going to pick up something, because the first thing that's pretty obvious is that good old Sherlew, you know, had an idea for a lot of things in a 100-foot street, but this day and age, it's not, I guess, I don't know, Aaron, are you gonna propose a railroad trolley out there? I don't, if he does that, then you probably wanna stay with a 100-foot width, but if he's not of that mindset, then, yeah, that thing can be shrunk down, and I don't think that people just generally have a lot of problem with it, but we need to do a better job in the methodology and arriving and having a plan in the future that all of those landowners, and that could be passed on to some future landowner that says, hey, we looked at it, this is why we did this, but you know, here's the ultimate plan for it. That would definitely keep annexation in mind. So.
Well, and the thing with that is the berries on that corner lot now, so there's only 4 landowners to talk to.
So you're saying that,
And I mean, if we can make this go rapid, because I don't want to hold the hours up at all. So I mean, whatever I gotta do to help get this along.
But
I'm
you're interested in doing this?
Oh, absolutely. You know, if I can.
And what do you think, have you spoke to Bruce? Well, he doesn't.
I don't think the Wrights would have any issue, and I certainly don't think the Berries would have any issue, because we're all actually gonna benefit and gain.
Green property.
So, I wouldn't see that there's anything from us that's gonna hold us up,
other than cooperation with the joint survey possibly?
yeah.
When the town closes the street, half goes to one side, half goes to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, you've been taking care of.
That's closing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what you're saying is currently we have to decide on either.
You need to
Accept or
decide
deny,
on
so-
this petition, and
and
this,
then
this petition isn't gonna
Put in a different one.
get you to
have
the
a-
end point. They need to start over with a new petition,
Okay.
because the adjoiners that are gonna join into the process, they need to be signing the petition and putting it forth, so.
Okay.
Yes, we've got a lot of good information, we've got a lot of background, and it's gonna make it that much easier for the next steps, but this petition needs to be dealt with today, so extending it, it's a possibility, but you still don't have the adjoining landowners, you're still gonna deal with only that strip with this petition, so if you deny it today, then we just take a little step back and proceed on and get everybody included, so.
Okay. So we're at the juncture.
Right, if it's gonna benefit everybody on the block, I mean, we certainly don't want a tomato throwing over the fence thing. I mean, that's not what this is about. We didn't honestly know anybody else was interested. You know what I mean? We were just looking at, like I said, making it legal to throw up something to park a boat in, so.
Yeah.
If we can make it work for everybody up there, might as well do one and done.
I agree.
And get it done.
I don't have a problem with what Tim just said, but I would like to
Move forward.
proceed as fast as we can, is all I'm saying.
No, we're not looking to throw up 10 tomorrow. We just want it,
But
on a
next week,
shelf,
we
so.
want to.
Yeah. We need a motion to either accept the petition or deny it, I guess.
I would make a motion that we deny the partial abandonment of Sherlew Avenue.
I'll second that.
Okay.
We'll Move forward.
All in favor of the motion to deny this specific petition, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And then I guess if there's steps, like what we need to do, I guess we'll talk to Jeff, and then, so we'll deal with Jeff, you deal with Bruce. And then
We
we'll
should all,
we'll get together with margaritas and then figure it out.
I just, where do we go? Do
Yeah,
we
where
petition
do we-
back to
where
the
do we
county
go
or to the
now?
city?
No.
You.
It's not the city,
Yeah.
the city's got
To
really
the
nothing to
county.
do with it.
We really got
But
nothing, we got nothing to say other than the potential
Oh, for the,
for the sewers.
okay.
So what do we do now?
So I worked up a petition for you, but I didn't even really have you sign it. I mean, I took your letter, but I worked up a petition, but I'll just amend that petition so that it will include all the people joining lot owners on that. And then whoever signs that petition, in signing that, they're gonna be interested. So at that time, let's develop how much information we need. You know, the utilities is gonna look like this, and, you know,
We already know that homework's done.
Yeah.
Well,
We know what the
We can
plans
go
look
measure
like,
50,
you know.
50, up in the middle, I'll go measure my distances and get an idea where we think the sewer
But-
would go and get that.
But I think the landowners, you're gonna need it surveyed at a point in time. So right now, I would suggest you just go to the individuals that are out there and say, we want to use such and such surveying service to get this done. And at that point in time, go out there and set, the difficulty is that the pins, and you can see these points along here, and you can see with other surveys, these stone pile rocks are sitting out there, they're 62.5 feet from the corner of your lot. There's not a pin on your lot.
Well, we have pins, Tim.
You have pins because of the
No.
Stelling survey. He reset pins.
We have pins
In our front
near
yard.
where we're talking the property we want. There are pins over there, because that's. what we
Then
were
somebody
told.
subsequently set them, because when in 1904, they didn't set pins.
Right, somebody else has done it. It's a
Yeah.
pin setting in
So,
cement.
right now, the thing is along that street in there, along Sherlew and everything else, here are the pins. Then we know we can measure the road and do that. So just go in there, set the corner pins on the 4 pieces of property, and we'll measure from there, and then that's how I'll amend my finding. Just say, this is where the road is. We can all measure it off at that point in time.
So,
Can you email
Ted, do you know where
the
yours
surveyors?
are?
I know where the one between the berries and I is. It's there.
Do you have one?
But it's a pin, it's not like, you're saying that this has been resurveyed at some point,
People over the years have
had their own stuff.
yeah, they wanted to know where the corners are and do that, but the general survey, there's nothing on here other than those stones are out in the
I'll just
street.
have Candace email us.
So the next step for us then is to get a surveyor out
Surveyor.
there?
John Kelly's.
Okay, and then you'll handle the petition portion?
Petition. Yes.
All right, well, the four of us will just talk and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. We'll get it done.
Land Solutions and Community Wildfire Protection Plan Proposal Update.
So Dave DeGrandpre of Land Solutions, he's put together a proposal for us. We had it advertised out there for a number of weeks for a proposal. They've indicated that they were pretty busy, but anyway, we didn't have anything ending on the receipt of a proposal, and I know there's other consulting companies that watch our ads real carefully, and especially Great West and Ellen and stuff, so it's not like those people didn't see it and pay attention to it, but we didn't get any of the calls. So at that point in time, Dave and I conversed, and he still was willing to put together a proposal, so he did that, and we just thought it'd be best if he was here and I can discuss, but Dave can probably give you more detail on what he proposed to do to update the community wildfire plans.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dave DeGrandpre with Land Solutions. I'm based out of Sherlew, just over the hill. So I guess, where to start, maybe I can give you a little bit of background about my firm. We're a land use planning consulting firm. We've been in business for about 14 years now. I started off working for Lake County in Polson as their lead planner. Did that through the early 2000s when things were really cooking, when there was a lot of second home development, things like that. Became interested in wildfire protection at that time. There's a lot of development going on in the wildland-urban interface. So got to start there. And so, we work it's primarily for cities and counties across the state. It's almost all in Montana. We've done some North Dakota work, but we do lots of different types of planning, from long-range growth policy or comprehensive type planning to zoning, update subdivision regulations. And the past few years, we've been particularly involved with wildland-urban interface type issues, fire protection type issues. I guess maybe the two most notable projects we've worked on, we were recently hired to write a a document, a report essentially for counties in the state of Montana. So it's a statewide document. It's about some of the opportunities that you have, some of the steps that counties can take to address WUI type issues with regards to things like long-range planning, like we're talking about, or will be talking about here today, zoning or building codes, and public outreach and education efforts, working with the public to try to reduce fuels and develop homes safely and things like that. That's the main one. And there have been a few others, but in terms of this project here, I thought, I broke it down into 6 distinct tasks, just for organizational sake, and so I could come up with a cost I thought that made sense. What I'm proposing to do, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the proposal I put together, but essentially the first step would be background research and data collection, essentially mapping, working with the Forest Service, the DNRC, the Department of Revenue, to get our baseline maps together where we have strong GIS type capabilities. We would like to interview Forest Service personnel, your emergency service, fire warden, people like that to understand what's happened in the past with regard to fire protection efforts, what's worked, what hasn't, what the status of some of the interlocal agreements are, the capacities of the different organizations, things like that, like fire districts, for example, and then different roles. So that's kind of task 1, is just background research and data collection. Essentially, we want to make sure that we understand the situation and don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to start from where you are today. The second thing, and I think this is really critical, it's putting together a steering committee. And community wildfire protection plans are actually, there are not too many requirements that the federal government has for what these CWPPs need to look like, but one thing that has to happen is they need to be collaborative efforts. They need to have participation from the DNRC, from the Forest Service, from fire districts, and other folks who you deem to be appropriate. I think the best way to go about this is, we're not going to come in here and tell you exactly what needs to be done. It's really important that we listen, that we talk to people who know the conditions, who know the fuels, who understand, we'll have good mapping capabilities and can come up with, fuel types and structural locations and critical infrastructure locations and all those types of things. That's no problem. But what we really hope to do is develop a steering committee that we can kind of facilitate and ask questions of, and can help to, our role will be to facilitate the discussions and the decision making, but we really want the steering committee, we want to work with them to help guide this process. And so I'm hopeful that after a year like this, I know that you have some good relationships already with some of the agencies out there, but I think this is another opportunity to try to bring everybody to the table, make sure that everybody's has a stake in the outcome of this, is pulling in the same direction, and identify specific projects, fuels reduction type projects in particular, in the coming years. Industry is another one. I know that Tricon would probably want to see at the table as well, which to me makes a lot of sense. So forming a steering committee and facilitating those discussions and decision making, I think, is a really critical part of this. Then comes, of course, plan writing. So getting the information that we got from the steering committee as we wound kind of through the process and do the actual plan writing. And then another critical component of this is taking it out to the communities, taking it out to the citizens. And so what I propose to do is to hold 3 meetings. It would be kind of east, central, and west, or maybe it's north, central, and south, however you describe it in Mineral County. But to make sure that citizens are on board, or at least have the opportunity to weigh in. We'll provide recommendations, maps, things like that. It'll be hopefully a pretty intuitive. What we typically do with a situation like this is have an open house type meeting where we've got posters up on the walls, people at different stations where we're talking to people, showing them the contents of the plan and the recommendations, taking notes, recording conversations, things like that. And then once we've gotten feedback from the public, and we've got buy-in from the decision makers, the steering committee folks, and yourselves, then we'll revise the plan and bring it hopefully to the adoption process. And the whole project, I think it'd take to do that scope, the level of detail, I think it'd be about 8 months. Again, it's really critical. And what I envisioned is that Land Solutions, and also we're bringing in folks who have very significant fire experience. A guy named Lewis Fleming, master's in forestry. He's done a lot of fire behavior type work. a lot of information technology type work, and I think we may be bringing another fire professional as well. We'll see how it goes. But Land Solutions would be the primary contractor, and then we would subcontract with the fire professionals. So I think it would take about 8 months, and with the scope of work I put together, it's a not-to-exceed fee of $33,000. And, there might be some ways to whittle that down a little bit, depending on, additional roles. Like if, for example, the county were to do some of the printing of maps, things like that just, I think we could whittle it here and there, take a few hours off here and there, although I would rather not whittle it down too much, because I want to come up with a product that has buy-in from all the different stakeholders. The Forest Service is really involved with and can take forward and help produce fuels. DNRC can do the same. The community's been involved. So I think that's the general plan of attack that I propose.
How would planning this out and talking about it, how would that, like you pointed out, we're mostly Forest Service, so how would ideas basically from your fire people, they're probably going to tell them they need to do some more thinning or some more logging. How's that actually going to make it happen? Because we've been barking up that tree for a long time with them already. So how will this put more teeth into that into that reminder?
Well, what I know is that having a community wildfire protection plan makes the Forest Service's life easier in terms of allocating funds for fuels reduction projects. If there is an environmental challenge, a lawsuit challenge, there's an expedited review process. They don't have to do the same level of environmental analysis, so it provides them some incentive. But I guess maybe more to what I think is the point of your question, it's really up to the Forest Service to choose to implement the plan or to do much of the implementation. There'll be some other things, I'm sure, so probably some working with homeowners to reduce fuels, things like that, but ultimately that needs to be a discussion held with the Forest Service folks. The plan doesn't give you the authority to make them reduce fuels.
Yeah.
Is the Forest Service, have they been, so you're saying they've been pretty reluctant to do that?
They haven't been reluctant, it's just that they're, our local district anyway, they just kind of having to share their NEPA people and stuff with another district. They're kind of spread kind of thin as far as getting the project off the ground.
Well, they face litigation when they get one off the ground. Commonly, the Cedar Tom project took 7 years to finally get a tree cut off of the hillside.
Sure.
Laws, rules, and regulations that those folks got to go through to get things going just extends the time that a project can go. They may want to do some things, but because of certain specifications, they can't do it. We did have the other side of the picture there where if they proposed something, it was appealed right away. That just ties everything right up. And there's, at this time, it doesn't seem like there's a whale of a lot of give and take on that other side to balance things out. You can look at the forest on the Superior District, and the Forest Service has more than a major role. They have the pump. Everything that has to happen on National Forest. That's it.
Well, I know this gives them, having this plan and an updated one, gives them, gives the Forest Service some leverage, or gives them, I think, the ability, like I said, to expedite the environmental processes, to expedite appeals and things like that. But it doesn't eliminate some of these barriers. It makes them easier, but some of them are still there.
What I've heard from the district office is that you update your growth plan and you get a current community wildfire plan, and those are the two elements that they can work with. They can hold them up and do that. When they're dated, they don't want to hold it up and say this is what the community is currently thinking. So I'm hoping that, can be optimistic that we'll have the one process of it, but we get the protection plan updated, then here it is, Forest Service, we've done both aspects. That's what you've asked us for. We've done it, it's completed, so back in your court. Right now, they can always point to us and say, well, you've got an old fire plan. How's that really going to serve us? So,
Well, I believe our old one is from 2005, is that correct?
that's correct.
And so, I mean, it's just a little bit, it's 2017 now, so it's getting pretty dated. And I do use it in my NEPA write-ups that I'm required to do for these larger scale projects. There's so many components to these large scale, like the Cedar Tom, the 12 Tamaracks, the Jam Crackers, and now the Red Bull projects. There's a timber report, there's a silviculture report, there's a fuels report, and in my fuels report, I speak very heavily towards the fact that we have a community wildfire protection plan. It's just another piece of the puzzle, per se, in the NEPA document to help move things along, especially in the urban interface.
So that'd help you if we had that in place then, right?
Well, and I still use the old one.
Yeah, yeah.
I do. I mean, I still, I'm going to be doing one for Red Bull, and if we don't have a new one, I will use the old one.
Yeah.
It's just going to say it's from 2005, and here's the,
But an updated one would give you a little more bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I'm going to be honest with you right now, the litigants that we have, the work in the WUI is not the issue. That's usually a pretty easy sell for us. That's not the biggest, that's not where we're getting litigated.
Okay.
But it's still an important piece of the puzzle, and it's still something we should do too. And correct me if I'm wrong. Won't this help? Does it help you guys as well? Can we get more like grant type stuff with this Title III? And I mean, that's kind of out of my realm, but I was under the understanding that it does help for those types of things too. I'm not sure, I guess, but it seems like it would.
It does help, and the DNRC is finally put Mineral County back on the radar screen, and they're anticipating something later this fall. But it would be nice to be matched up that when the DNRC gets into their mitigation program, and what they're going to be doing is that they can take the wildfire protection plan and say, this is your highest priority. Let's go to that place. Right now, I look at the 10 priorities in there, and they're not quite reversed, but they're sure not in that order. It's not where we have the priorities, what we need now and stuff, because part of them have been mitigated. Part of them, one of the highest priorities has had a major fire, and it's like, it's already happened, so.
Yeah, I definitely say it definitely needs to be updated for multiple reasons.
Tim, how much this would come out of Title III monies? Is that what we were thinking?
All of it.
How much had we set aside for that?
Well, I talked about the plan could be up into the $40,000-$50,000 range and stuff, but we were just a little unsure about the range and what it would take in there, but so we kind of gave it a pretty wide sidebars, some above 20-some thousand up to 30,000-40,000, but it's difficult to go out and compare protection plan for more populous counties and that part of it.
Yeah, I'm not.
So I don't know.
I didn't remember how much we had spoken about.
I mean, we weren't doing a high-end dollar on the thing, but I think the other thing about the Title III is that there's nothing more specific than the language in there about updating your community wildfire protection plan. I mean, that's the most audit-safe process that we can do is develop a new plan. But I think the new plan has at least the potential to cover a few more bases out there that will help the county in the future.
Yeah.
Do you remember who wrote the 1 in 05 and how much did it cost?
That's one of the major challenges, is that it was basically the fire districts and the Forest Service. I mean, it was a cooperative effort, but it was like Dave said, the fire districts, but if I had to say a principle, and either Bob Durley or somebody else can correct me, but it was really driven out of the Frenchtown Fire Department. And it was their GIS, their people, their put it together. And the one thing that's obvious about this is that to date, it's unknown to me that there's an electronic copy of that plan out there. We've scanned it,
Yeah.
but the original document, the original holders, the original maps, they're not available.
Computers weren't invented yet.
You know,
Well, Scott had some money extra, and he just thought that's the best way to work it, so he volunteered his people.
but he had a GIS person that
Yes.
they had hired at the Frenchtown Fire, and so we had just started our stuff. We exchanged information, but the GIS portion of it really came from Frenchtown. This is going to be owned by Mineral County after Dave gets done, so that's going to be a distinct. You know, if there's some reason to maybe do some modification to this in a few years, we own the information, and then we can go back and do the adjustments. So that's going to be another, from my perspective, that's going to be one of the major improvements, is that we now own the information. So. And in 2005, there is not a single fire chief still in that position. I mean, we have 4 new fire chiefs, or 3.
Is Roger still here?
That was not a fire chief.
Fire warden, yes, but fire chiefs, no. They're all.
I
So
think it's because that's such a high-paying job, he just sticks with it.
It's kind of like the fire chief job.
I was really hoping that Carol could be here. She obviously had a meeting and stuff, but I don't know if Lori wants to comment, but sometimes I still think that the detail and level for that WUI out there, that it hopefully maybe could translate into something with some categorical exclusions, but I don't know why it wouldn't give you a higher priority.
Yeah, you'd think.
To say we want, this is critical. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm fixated on Cabin City, because when that place goes up there, it's like they don't think they're going to be
Is that
saving.
where your summer home is?
It is. You just saw 40 acres up there.
I don't know hardly anybody in there. All I know is that that's a set place for sweet fire to come across.
That'd burn in the wintertime.
We've actually done quite, have you been up there lately, since we did all the entire toboggan project? And we have 2 more burns left up there, and we'll have.
On the backside of Cabin City, though?
Above it.
Above
Above, yeah, the Cabin City campground.
Well, just reaching out that.
You just finished some of that here not very long ago.
Yeah, and there's still more to do. It's not quite done.
But
yeah, I understand what you're
But it
saying.
needs to be done on
Yeah.
this side too. I mean, to sell it to those people. So.
Yep, and I can speak a little bit for Carol. It again, it kind of goes back to what Lori was talking about too, with the capacity thing. And there are a few other avenues to get some help to come in, but even then, it always goes back to that capacity thing. I do know that there is one, and I wish I knew more about it, and Carol does, and I apologize for not knowing more about it, but there is, we got on a list, maybe Roger, you know about it a little bit, for there's some work maybe gonna be happening up Cruzan area too. And that was through, that'll be.
Good Neighbor Authority.
A good neighbor authority, and so, but something like this could, definitely help us decide the wheres and the whens. But a lot of it comes into play too. It's always the, you gotta have, it has to be doable, on multiple different scales. So, but yeah, even with the Good Neighbor Authority coming in, and that'll be great, but you still go back to, like, they don't have a fuels person. They
Right.
don't have, so it's still
You
it's
still
still
have to
going to
have
be
the
a very
people.
big impact on our district, even though it looks like that they're just going to come in and do it for us and be done. But there's a lot of puzzles and a piece missing for that too. But it would definitely highlight when you look at the grand scheme of things. And I mean, I think our old one actually even tried to do that. It highlights the fact that essentially all of Mineral County, especially, part of it's just the way that the land is shaped with how our drainages sit and how all the homes are down on the bottom. And, it shows that we are very, very high risk, which is a good thing to show.
I think the Hagen to Borgia area, all the way through there, when I was doing fuel mitigation, we can look across where you turn to go to up there, across that. They had that little fire over there. That was the first thing they started to say, holy smokes, does that come across? Well, from Hagen up west seems to be the most challenged. I can't argue about the one that you were talking about there at 12 Mile, but
City with that whole basin.
we just, we're quite vulnerable at the west end.
Yes, the west end is it.
Yeah.
Quite a few new homes in Packer Creek and all that country back in.
Yeah, and you can go through there, and there's nothing you're going to do to stop that fire when it comes through there.
No.
It's
Gonna burn her to the ground.
it's going to go. Okay, I guess that was one of my problems, was trying to get some fuel going from the Borgia west. As the one man said, I like that tree, Roger, and when I see the fire coming over the hill, I'll chop it down. I said, okay, but I had a few projects there, but that lodgepole has come back in so many places thick, and it's just going to go, that's all.
Yep. And we do have it's kind of a new thing, and now we've done it for 2 years now. It's the nation has kind of adapted it. They're calling it the high priority hazardous fuels work. And so I don't know if you guys have been up Second Creek or up Deep Creek. And we did a bunch of fuels work up there this year, and a lot of it was contract work. But again, we got the work done, and then we have a little tiny allowance for doing the contracting work, and it was a lot of work. But this money, we really feel like this is going to be a continual thing. The first time they did it, it was 2 years ago, and we were like, well, hey, this is kind of nice. Let's submit some work, and so we did. And then they did it again this year, and so now we're like, okay, I think they're going to keep doing this. They're taking money off of the top, and they're calling it hazardous fuels work, and you have to. It's a big production. You have to submit proposals, and it's not logging, but it's definitely any type of hazardous fuel. Yeah, but it's hazardous fuels work that we can do around homes, and a lot of that's going to be piling
On Forest Service.
On Forest Service, yeah, it's not on private. But so we're going to be looking at that again for next year too, and so that's another thing that we can point to. That we can use this to say.
But that would really be nice to have. Okay, the Forest Service is here, and mitigation dollars for the county and these different sources, they're over here. But put the two together, so you're not. We're.
Yep.
I think that's one thing that the plan needs to try to end up developing, is that if you're going to work on these things,
I would agree. It doesn't do much good if we do our little piece and then the private is just
doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Well, you did the agency did some up Camel's Hump Road along that line with the fire crew, just trying to meet the needs of a couple of people who had talked and see if they could.
Yeah, we've done actually
that.
quite a bit of that. If we did, I could start from the entire county, actually, well, our district, and just little pieces here and there. We definitely did a whole bunch up Cedar Creek behind Rick Nemitz's, and we did some behind Kerpus's house, and we did some up Timberman's, up Cabin City, and we've just done little ones. There's some Sharon McGee's. We did a bunch. We did a bunch by John Roberts. So those types of things.
Yes.
well, but that's not being shown up in the current plan.
No.
So that's another good positive.
Okay, so then getting back to the plan here, I guess, talking Dave here to blend that together, you had that schematic there, how that was going to go. The first step is what now? If you got the contract, what would be the first step you do?
First step would be background research, data collection, and also interviews. So we're going to do some initial mapping. We would get together with Forest Service, with DNRC, with Roger, with the other kind of stakeholders, figure out what's been done, what the plan ought to focus on, and try to build some buy-in. Get people kind of excited and motivated to participate. That's really task one. And
Okay,
then-
stop right there. Because that sounds like it's halfway simple. I was trying to look back at when we did 5. We went around and we did a variety of things, looking at things. I got to think you might look at it. We're looking at the total county. We're looking at the total county. And I guess to just start out with the total county, I think it's an overwhelming project. I think we ought to isolate some areas, say put it into 3 different sections in the county or something, and concentrate on that one. It doesn't make any difference whether east, west, or north. And see how that starts to gel with those stakeholders that are in that area that are going to be affected. Okay? Getting the Forest Service well, I guess if I just had a third of the county in one unit you're looking at, and we sat down and went through this process, how did we come out with that third of the county in the process that you're looking at? If that worked good, then we go the other and the other. The Forest Service has done some work on, I didn't review 05 session there, but I guess when we looked at the west end there, we looked across the Deer Creek, we looked at that hillside over there, we can look at St. Regis when we had the fire up 2 Mile.
Little Joe.
Little Joe. And it stopped, okay? The rumor got out, we're going to evacuate St. Regis. We got that squelched pretty fast. But then when we got all said and done, the fire's out, everything went back to normal. And then I said, geez, look at all the timber that could be salvaged, and we could make that fireproofed along that line, pulling out some timber. And the comment came back to me. It says, can't go in there, Roger, we don't have any roads. And that was a wrong thing to say to me, because I think you could punch a temporary road in that, you could clean up the down material, you clean that, fireproof it up, you could put that road back steep, you don't have to pull it all back and everything, and pull it out there. And I'd have to think in 4 years that would all have been grown up with reproduction, and that would have fireproofed that drainage coming into St. Regis. Okay, that was just one. Maybe it's off the subject a little bit, but if you had one area that we could work with all those people and come up with a good plan that they thought would work, then we could go to another. But to tackle the whole county is one goal. I think that might be harder to accomplish what we're striving to get, because there's just too much there to try and pull into one spot. So if you had a third of it, and we got that, the next third, and the next third. Yeah.
I don't know, I wasn't that much part of the last plan. I mean, I just barely coming on board, but I don't know that there was a lot of 9 Mile cooperation in the 2005 plan.
Oh, I don't think there was. I think we sat down, we looked at that thing, how can we do? And so we took the map and looked at things all the way to the west end, came down on the other side. And we looked at that thing and said, can we do this and this and this? I don't think we ever talked with the Forest Service, BLM, the rest of them. We had to have something to come up with, and so we said, okay, if this is what it's going to take, we looked at it, and 90% of it was on National Forest. That was my recollection of it, Tim.
So, well, and I think that's what's advantageous about this, is that David's well aware that 9 Mile as part of the county and Superior as part of the county, so let's all get back and get on the page and plan together and stuff, so that'll be good.
And I think that will pull in, maybe 9 Mile will have more interest in what happens here.
Yeah, I mean, they would, any work that they would be doing in their portion of the county, that they will use it as well.
Yep.
So, are we just looking at one proposal here, or is there anybody?
Yes. All that was submitted was one proposal.
Okay. So, for this scope of work, I see the maximum figure not to exceed 33,000. And what's the timeline? You think probably about 8 to 12 months we should be.
Yeah, 8 months is, I think 8 months to do it, things can come up, but I think that's a fair schedule. Yeah, and we can jump right on it. I know that Forest Service folks, and they're gonna be a little busy for another month or so, I'm sure, but.
But a good time for us to do these types of things is, the January, February, March, that kind of thing.
So that part of the data collection, the timing's good.
Yeah, it would be good.
And Tim, this is new Title III money covering?
That's all we have left.
I didn't know if there was another bookkeeper saying you can't use it for that.
No, it's right, that's it
Yeah.
right, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so any more discussion, or got a motion?
I'll make a motion that we hire Land Solutions to do our updated community wildfire protection plan.
I would second that motion with the addition of not to exceed the 33,000.
Yep.
Be paid out of Title III fund.
All right, motion been made, seconded by Commissioner Simons. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Congratulations, sir.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excited about this.
I'm too.
We are too.
And I'll put together a standard contract. I'm sure you'll need insurance certificates and all that good stuff.
Okay,
And send it off to you next week.
okay,
Great.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lori.
I move that we approve the minutes of August 11th and 17th.
18.
I'll second that.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve claims in the amount of $69,334.85. And that's claim number 32702 to 32744. Checks number 7978 through 8019.
I would second that.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.